Okay, then I shall share screen. It's a delight to welcome Mr. Paul Sharman to the collective. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Morvin. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's we've met a few times, so it's nice to be able to sort of see a familiar face and talk composition. I've dug my special T-shirt out of the archive today.
There we go.
So,
That's great.
It just happens to be that was came from the last one.
Are they going to be made available?
I've not had another request for them, to be honest, so that's fine by me.
Strangely enough.
So if anybody wants one, I'll try and dig out the link, but they're that desperate. This was just a off-the-cuff thing I saw. But it's very interesting to talk, Paul, because your career in the Salvation Army is a very interesting one, because you've bounced around from the international staff band to territorial events and international conferences as a cornet player, bandmaster, composer, arranger. So it's like the complete cake with yourself and your experiences. But I always like we'll start at the very beginning. I'm guessing you were a pen and paper man when you started, but when did it start? How did you discover this compositional gift?
Well, the composing side of things for me is something, and I've said this before, something I sort of fell into really. It's a very gradual thing. I started off as a cornet player, started off playing the cornet when I was five years old. And that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to play the cornet. When I got a bit older and thought about the fact I maybe wanted to take that a little bit further, I also started having piano lessons so that I could go to use that at music college. And while I was having piano lessons, and it was with a lady who was at Birmingham Citadel with me at the time, a lady called Marion Parker, who is now the CO down in Worthing.
Yes.
She taught me piano, and while she was teaching me piano, she also taught me to play by ear. And as we were doing that, we started doing a little bit of composition. And while I was with her, I wrote a couple of singing company songs that I used, and the Birmingham Citadel Singing Company started singing those, which was nice. Mm-hmm. And it went from there. And I then started doing little arrangements for myself, my brother, and my dad to play in the school holidays. My dad was a music teacher, and he always had manuscript paper lying around. So we did. So I did some arrangements for us, the three of us, to play, which we tried to. And when my brother and I stopped giggling hard, we managed to get through a few of those. But I think it's safe to say that a trio for a cornet and two trombones didn't really take off, and sort of vanished to the history files. So it started off that way. I then went on to music college, again just wanting to play the trumpet really, and that's all. The composing and all the theoretical side of things was something I did, and because I had to do that. But while I was there, I started again arranging we had 10-piece brass groups and we had quintets, and I started arranging for those. At a similar time, I was made the YP band leader at Regent Hall. Mm-hmm. I started doing arrangements for the YP band there, and just really developed it on from there. So it was something that, as I say, I didn't set out to do that, but it gradually got more and more.
Grew on you.
And sorry. Go on.
No, I was just going to say it's very interesting to hear that progression of, the situation presented you with the ability to say, okay, we'll do this arrangement, we'll do for that group. So when you started doing the brass quintets and the arrangements, who were the people that were sort of talking through the score with you and helping, giving you the strength? Were there anybody that sort of critiqued your work, as Jim Kerno would say?
No, not at all at that time. So I was just doing it off my own back. My dad had a look at a few of the things I've been doing, but that was all really. It was just a case of arranging things from a piano score, then getting to play them through. I had the groups there. I was playing in the group, so then we could play them through, see what worked, see what didn't. And it was almost just just that learning process by itself, really, at that stage. I'd not really had any formal lessons in composition at all. None of it was in my course at college. There was theory and harmony and all that sort of thing, but in composition itself, until relatively recently, it was just a self-taught thing, and it was as much of being around music the whole time and different styles of music. So when I was at college, I was doing lots of various. I was playing lots of different styles of music. So, I was playing in a symphony orchestra, I was playing for a choral society, I was playing in shows, I was playing, as I say, in brass groups, I was playing even for a short time in a German Oompa band that used to go around playing at various gigs around South London.
Interesting.
It was getting involved as a player in those different styles. I think that then when I started arranging in different styles, I had a sort of an understanding of how that worked, and I think that did help me.
Kind of the groundwork mechanics, isn't it? You understood the mechanics of the group rather than trying to force yourself. So okay, I've got to try and force an arrangement out that I may not be familiar with, but because you were playing with it and doing this on a daily basis, it sounds like it was easy to work from the mechanics inside out rather than having to write for an alien group. Say, we've got 2 trumpet players and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to emphasise, at the time I wasn't thinking, this will come in handy when I start writing later on.
Yeah.
A few years down the line, I started doing this, then I started arranging for band in a certain style, and actually, I played in this style, what works. So that, I think that immersion in all those different styles of music definitely helped.
Yeah, it's interesting how your lifestyle it impacts how you live your lifestyle and your training and development. I mean, how many people have said, at college, I would not have achieved so forth if it wasn't for this particular tutor who said, do you know what? I think your strength would be not to do A, B, and C, but D, E, F.
Yeah.
It's kind of a latent talent that you never thought of actually nurturing and stuff. I mean, when I was going through this earlier today, very much the same as people like James Kerner and Roger Trigg, you've covered most genres because of what you've written and what you've been asked to write. I think, I was trying to think of the first piece of music that I heard, because it's not necessarily the first piece of music that you got published or played or recorded. I think we were in, I think it was a Central London with the Welcome to Linda Bond as General, and it was the first time I met you in the flesh, and I said, Paul Sharman, on duty. Yes, that's me.
Yeah, on duty.
I said, yes. I said, I've been trying to thank you because that really has been picking me up lately. And it was kind of, it's another interesting writer that I hadn't come across. And, that's almost halfway down the list of your chronological pieces. So it was interesting things. But I was at several pieces at work today, being at work, being in an office. One thing that struck me about your work is you have certain pieces which are very melodic and very meditational, and the tune is very much present. And I wish I'd have taken the phone out and made a note of the title, but there was this wonderful piece of music where the band was almost playing sedately, and all of a sudden you break everything off and the cornets come in with like a whistle to say, come on, wake up, you've got to join in here. Right, okay. You seem to have this ability to compose a lovely piece of music and make sure that at certain sections, instruments go, okay, your turn, come in, it may be a whistle, it may be you've got to reinforce the tune, but you're keeping everyone on their toes, even if they're resting and relaxing.
Yeah, and I think some of that is, as again, my experience as a player. I want to be interested in what I'm playing, and I think I think as a player as much as I can when I'm writing, what is going to keep a player interested, whether it's a solo cornet player, whether it's a second horn player, what is going to keep them interested in any piece of music. And I think that part writing is very important in that.
Yeah. I think I was looking a while ago that one of the things that struck me about talking to composers, and particularly the younger generation, I will include you in that, is the fact that a lot of old songs get used in solos and selections rather than the latest Graham Kendrick, Chris Tomlin thing. And I think it was I Dare to Be Different. I was really searching for a band name, and I think it was your cornerstone of Serve Christ.
Serve Christ, yeah.
Uses that tune. And it was almost kind of the first time I found a band piece that actually used chords. How did Serve Christ come about?
Serve Christ was a request from Martin Bennett at William Booth Memorial Halls in Nottingham, and I think it was dedicated to his father-in-law, and he'd been a good servant of the corps there, and the tunes were given to me, so it was so different, and Jesus Is My Life song.
Yeah, 2007 it got published. So
yeah. So that was one of those that was asked for, and the tunes were given to me to arrange together. So that's how that came about.
I know you've said in previous podcasts that the first one is Get Involved, which I believe was written for the YP band at Regent Hall, and it was
yeah. So that was So when I was talking about writing stuff for the Rink YP band at the time, that was the first one that I sort of completed. I wasn't sure about whether to send it up. It was just something that seemed to work. I'd no real thought about getting anything published at that point, really. And somebody heard it and suggested I send it up. And then that became my first published piece in 1998, I think.
Yeah, 98 is the credited listing on the official website, Dale Caffel. It's interesting because you're not someone who hangs about and just does a whole load of hymn tuning. It's a very steady progression, but the list of compositions is obviously dependent on the order you write them in, because you can have solos and instrumental things that get written and things you yourself write. In the now, when you get a new idea, is it a pen and paper job, or is it especially if it's commissioned, okay, the tunes, and they say I want it to finish with Cardiff. Does that mean I'll go to the computer, slot Cardiff in, and work backwards, kind of thing?
No, not at all. It's pen and paper. I have a music notebook that I use, and everything is written with pen and paper to start off with, or pencil and paper to start off with. So throughout those, there's if you look in my old notebooks, you'll see pieces written all the way through. So my At the Cross, for example, you can have a look in my notebook, and it's there, and you can play it on the piano from beginning to end. On Christmas Night is another one. Sometimes it works that I jot down the ideas in a short score. That's how I do that. So a piano score with an extra stave, and I will write down the ideas in handwritten form, and then I'll come to the computer and enter it into Sibelius, score it out, and a few other ideas will probably come along as I'm doing that. So then I'll add a little bit that maybe isn't written down somewhere, but it will move on because I'm in the flow of doing something. But it will all have come from pen and paper initially.
Yeah. When you're writing an original composition, it's not an outside request, and there is technically no limit on what you're doing, because unless you're deliberately trying to make it a cornet solo or a hymn tune arrangement or a festival arrangement, the sky's the limit as far as what it can turn into. But poets can say they could write 45 verses of a particular poem and just keep going. When do you ever find that you have to kind of control the imagination and sort of bring it down to a level because it's sort of going off on a tangent that may not feel comfortable?
Yeah, generally before I start, I have an idea of the form the piece is going to take. And so I know roughly what I want to do at any given point. Now that isn't set in stone, and that could alter, but generally I know if I'm writing this will work as a hymn tune setting, or I'm now going to try and write a bigger piece. So as a whole, I know where I'm going with it, so I don't tend to go off in too many tangents. So I've got the specifications I know I'm going to stick to roughly when I've got it going. So it doesn't ever become anything else. Now, sometimes I have had parts of a piece that actually don't work. This long tune here, these 32 bars here, they don't work for that piece actually. So let's take them out. Let's bring it all together. So you're changing the form of the piece there, and those 32 bars can actually be then the basis of another piece.
Nothing is ever wasted. I mean,
No.
as a player and as someone who has to sit beside and has sat beside players in the band who are playing your compositions, how important is it to you that when the piece is being played, you know, as virtually every composer will say, if you're using Sibelius, it's pitch perfect, note perfect, there's no fluffs and there's no mistakes. But in real life, the horn section goes, that's not working. I said, you need, it's not possible to play that kind of notation. It forces you to go back and sort of bring it back to a human level. How important is that for you to be able to sort of get that real life feedback?
It's very, very important, I feel. I think if we become too reliant on Sibelius in many ways, it doesn't help. So to actually hear a band playing it through often sounds very different. As you're saying, there's the human factor of tuning, playing together, all those sorts of things which the computer does brilliantly every single time. But it's a nice moment, usually a nice moment to hear that play for the first time. I have to say, for years I sat in the ISB there as a new piece would be put on the stand, and yes, right to the end of my time in the band, when if anything of mine new came up, being very nervous as to how it would sound, if it would sound as I was thinking it was going to sound,
Really?
about it, and I would still be nervous. And they'd all be very kind because my name's on top of it, and I was sat there.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happens nowadays.
That's interesting because, I mean, I would put your name with, people like Ken Downey and Andrew Blythe, who, if you know what is acceptable format for the series is, and you can almost, if the Sharman pieces come up, if the Blythe pieces come up, as Bill Hunter said, it will be the correct grammar. So it wouldn't be a case of, he's done a flop one here, and what on earth has he been writing here? You're someone who's not sort of cheated. When you're doing an arrangement and you've got, you're doing, say, a hymn tune arrangement of Cardiff, for instance, how do you originalise that? Because, as you've said, you're exposed to so much music and different arrangements. Someone says, we want to have a Paul Sharman arrangement for our concert, and the choir loves Cardiff. You do a hymn tune arrangement of Cardiff. How do you originate that and separate it from every other version of the hymn tune arrangement of Cardiff that you've been exposed to?
Yeah, well, see, what I do on any sort of hymn tune setting I was doing, I would play it through on the piano a few times and just try and find something different that hasn't been found, whether that's a different chord progression somewhere that works a little bit differently, maybe changing some of the length of the phrases if it's to be a band piece. Obviously, if it's to be sung to, that's not a good idea. But seeing what you can do with the piece to put your own mark on it, because it's not just about scoring out the old harmony that everybody knows to Cardiff. It's making something that is yours. Now, as composers, arrangers, we have those chords and chord progressions that we go to. So there is probably something in that I know what chords can work somewhere actually to lift it slightly, and other people will have their own chords that do the same thing. So I think it's working through and making, if it was a 3-verse setting, for example, to make sure that I haven't got 3 identical harmonies, so that you can change it with the harmonies, you can actually change it with the scoring. I look for little points in the tune that I can take out and maybe use as like a motif that I could then take and use as an introduction, or as a link, or as an ending. So that's how I go about doing it, really. It's just playing about with that tune, playing about with the harmonies, finding bits of the tune that I can use elsewhere, and then putting my own take and putting it together.
Is there? I presume you may be someone who just enjoys the challenge and the response of whatever comes your way. But do you personally have a sort of a preference for a hymn tune arrangement or chord solo or a festival arrangement? Or is it just a case of you enjoy what comes next?
I think it's a case of enjoying what I'm doing at that time, really.
Okay.
Over the last few years, more than any other, I think I've done the sort of the more devotional hymn tune settings, particularly I would say over the last 3 or 4 years. Things like Time to Be Holy, Hide Me Now. I've done a piece called Speak Lord, that's not been published yet, and A Renewing Grace on the tune Shalvi, again soon to be published. But I enjoy working with those tunes. I also enjoy getting the theme from those songs, from the words. So Renewing Grace, which is Chalvi taking I have no claim on grace, and those words. And then so I've got then little quotes of the wonder of his grace, grace there is my everyday state, within that, that's helping that theme, because I think it's important as a Salvationist composer that I am taking that theme and making people think about the theme rather than just the music. You know, very much it's more than just that for me, and I want to take people with me on that journey.
Is that, in a sense, easier nowadays because of the multimedia facilities we have available? That, I mean, Regent Hall has some of the most epic ones available. I mean, even if you went to Woodbridge, I could put a PowerPoint on the TV. So you could have a commission come in and say, you know, we want a cornet solo or an instrumental trio. And you kind of don't have to worry too much about the inclusion of the words, because, you know, for that all the words in the scripture that you had intended will be as you intended on the screens. Does that influence your writing as a composer, or does it kind of, you know, that's going to be an added bonus to it?
Yeah, that's an added bonus to it, really. I will try and make it work. The music's got to work by itself. The music, along with the words, has got to work by itself without anything helping. Now, a good introduction to a piece, a good setting up of a piece will help it, and telling people what to listen out for, what the composer's thoughts were at the time. And I think those, the presentations that can be put on the screens does enhance it for a lot of people. But it doesn't influence what I'm doing when I'm writing the piece. I think at that point, the piece and the music is the key. If we can do other things to add to that, then that's all well and good to help people's understanding.
So it's interesting because obviously there's only so much that can go into score notes aside from the technical challenges of trying to give the band an idea of the strengths of the notation and how it's presented. And you could literally say, this is a trombone solo based on, and it's in a salsa style or an Ira Sankey style. And it's very developed on the player being able to portray the music that you're trying to push across. Because as you say, all this music that you've been exposed to has helped influence and guide your embryonic writing. I mean, I would guess that one of the most, I think, I would love to remember, because I was present at the staff band rehearsal when you retired from the ISB, and they literally had a new piece of music on the stand, and what was the executive officer's name? Noel Wright? Was sitting in front of me, and you literally had a conversation as the band was starting to rehearse as to what that piece was based on. I think it was an echo of the horns doing the footstep or something. And I thought, what a blessing that, you know, you were sitting there and you were saying, do you know where the idea of this, the motivation of this piece comes from? It was from the horn section. I didn't write down what it was actually, but
I thought that could be Renewing Grace actually.
Yeah, possibly. But was there? I mean, you said you had the nerves with it. So when you sort of became the composer in residence for the ISB, what was there a case of, Stephen, no, I'll play the tunes and I'll write it, but you know that's an extra pressure I don't want. Was there a sense of with that?
No, I mean, I really started to enjoy the composition side of things, probably more than the playing side of things. And, you know, to have the band, to have the ISB playing your music, really, you know, was a real privilege for me, and that's how it was a Unity series recording, mid 2000s, I would guess. And I played on the demonstration recordings for the Unity series journals, and Steve Cobb conducted those. And there was a piece on one year called Righteousness, Peace and Joy.
Yeah,
which
very lovely piece.
become a little bit of a mini classic, I guess. But that was on the recording, and afterwards Steve spoke to me and he said, I think that could work as an ISB piece to get the guys back after the second the second half. And you think, well, blimey, the ISB are going to use something of mine.
Yeah.
And actually, it was great. It was I never thought that would happen. I was there, as I say, I was there as a cornet player. That was it, really. I'd done a little bit of writing, but then the ISB were using it. And then that is how On Duty came after that, because Steve said, well, we've been using this, let's try something else. Could you write something for the band, specifically for that slot?
Interesting.
So On Duty came about. Then, interestingly enough, we were talking about things we could do in it, and Phil Cobb was in the band at the time, and he said, if you can do in the middle of that, maybe a cornet solo, a jazz cornet solo, Phil could get up and play this, and so, quite tricky. So I made it not overly hard, and then a couple of little shakes in at the end. Anyway, we get first rehearsal on the stand, and I was down the line on the solo cornets at the time, and Kevin Ashman, principal cornet, leant forward to me when we got the piece game and said, "You wrote the solo, you play it." So I was like, oh, so I had to go. It wasn't quite Phil Cobb, but I played it.
Do you get that as a player, that you write a solo for yourself, so you're not gonna sort of instinctively write something you can't handle, and you play it out in rehearsal, and you feel like, oh, is he gonna fluff his out and say, well, you wrote that flipping piece? I mean,
See, I wouldn't really write a solo for myself for that reason. I think sometimes it's difficult. I know I know my limitations, what my limitations as a player were, and sometimes I have to be careful when I'm writing, because I can while it's good to think of as a player, sometimes I think I can think too much like a player and think I wouldn't want to have to play that. I wouldn't, and I maybe at the highest level of pieces I'm doing, trying to back off, thinking I wouldn't want to have to play that. I couldn't play that. I don't want to write. And I think sometimes those limitations could be there.
ISB 120, very big, memorable event for anyone who went, and for you as a member of the staff band and the experiences of that entire weekend, I'm sure indelibly printed. I think one of the pieces that struck me was Dance Beat. Can you tell us a little bit about how Dance Beat was put together? Because it's it's a lovely selection, and it had different people putting in. But how did it start become Dance Beat? Was it written for ISB 120, or did it sort of evolve out of it?
No, it was written for ISB 120. It's specifically for the Saturday night section, and the idea came because it was looking like it, in many ways, it was going to be quite a heavy night musically.
Yeah.
You had the Dudley Bright piece, Scottish folk variants. There was a lot of other things that were on there, and Steve just wanted a lighter number.
Yeah.
Break up the evening. So the idea I came up with, and I think Steve had a little bit of say into this as well, was to listen to the music of James Last. And
I know the name.
Yeah, he was a sort of band leader in the a band leader that did big band stuff, but he used a lot of strings on it, and it was quite easy listening music, very popular in the 60s, 70s, I think. And it was listening to that style of music, which is where the dance beat style came from. it really, I guess, it is that fast, slow, fast selection of just different styles of music. But it was the original idea for that 4 ISB 120 was that we could actually feature a rhythm section with the band on it.
Okay.
So keyboard, kit, and bass guitar. When it came down to it, that didn't work out in the way I'd have hoped, and we didn't have that. But that was the original concept, to have something that could be a little bit different and have the rhythm section on with the brass band on that.
It must have been, I mean, from a player point of view, I mean, being in the ISB, playing is very much at the top of the game. And also, was there the added stress of having to make sure that the compositions were being made ready for the many bands that needed to see it? So when they arrived in the UK, you know, it was kind of, you know, if the Melbourne staff band needs that part, was that a sort of a configuration that worked out well?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that had to be done. It had to be finished and ready and sent out to all the groups beforehand, so they could see it. I think actually it was Dansby was premiered, I think, the week before ISB 120, because I believe it was the Amsterdam staff band and York staff band did a concert on the tour, their pre-ISB 122, and they used it there. So it was just making sure that there was no added pressure really on that. It have had to be ready for the ISB to rehearse anyway. So there was no real pressure on that. And, you know, talk about the nerves of a piece coming out for the first time. Actually, once I've heard it, and actually, yeah, it works fine. That's absolutely fine.
You've done a lot of Christmas pieces. It's very interesting from a player point of view, Christmas is one of those times when there is no shortage of Salvation Army music to play, in the hope that maybe this year the band won't play Christmas Joy. And you just have that kind of eclectic, but bearing in mind that probably every carol has had an arrangement in multiple different styles. You've got a Christmas celebration. I did spot another one a while ago. On Christmas night, Good King Wenceslas. Bearing in mind that this Christmas has that sense of, oh, it's not going to be Christmas unless we hear a certain carol. How do you keep the Christmas arrangements fresh when the general public, you go past in the streets, or they sit down and listen to that Christmas concert, you know full well it's half a dozen saying Christmas carols, bump, we're happy. How is a composer doing the challenge of a Christmas piece?
Again, it's like we're talking about with the hymn tune arrangements. You know, it's thinking of a carol and saying, well, what can we do with that? I mean, on Christmas night, uses It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, the two different tunes. You know, it starts off in a sort of almost a sort of river dance type in the first movement, and then it goes into the different melody in the middle, and then comes out of a more upbeat, I guess it's my disco phase in the last movement. But
I like it.
It's playing with that tune and doing something with it. So that was on Christmas night, and that was for the Regent Hall band were the band at the Christmas Carol service at the Albert Hall one year, and they wanted a new piece, so I wrote that for it. And then Birmingham Citadel wanted one. That's where Star of Wonder came from, which is based on the Calypso Carol, which was also used as their sort of nativity. Each section was for the shepherds, the wise men. So that gave me something to hang it on, as it were. And then my most recent one in that trilogy, if you like, that Christmas trilogy, Star of Wonder, which is We Three Kings. And I'm not a great fan of the tune We Three Kings. Always tend to avoid it when I'm playing carols. Again, I made that into a sort of 4/4 upbeat style, along with the First Noel, to just make it a little bit different and hopefully make it something that people would want to listen to.
Yeah. What are the differences playing in a band like Regent Hall, which has an incredibly and well-deserved reputation, and then being found as being the bandmaster of it? I mean, it could be, you know, the band has this wonderful reputation of playing and being this wonderful ministry in central London, and all that accommodates that lifestyle of being in the West End and the influences and the people that walk past the hall. To go from the player to the bandmaster, and with many of the players going, okay, he's the bandmaster now, what's going to happen? What are the challenges that you enjoy as a composer with such an elite band?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is, first of all, it is a great privilege to be the bandmaster at the Regent Hall. It really is. And as you say, we're in that unique position geographically, although not at the moment, but you know, we are there in that West End setting. And I have to pay a massive tribute to Steve Hanover, bandmaster before me, who really used the band and really improved the communication of the group, sort of almost hanging it on that West End show start type feel. And the way he used the band, the way he used multimedia was fantastic. And during a lot of that journey, I wrote a lot of the music that was used for our Expressions evening, and the idea behind some of those pieces were for the band to have movement. So, for example, The Power of the Cross, which is one of mine, start with cornets. The idea there was the cornets it was getting from one piece where the cornets were finishing in front of the band to get them back. So we started off with the cornets playing Power of the Cross, so then they could go back while the horns played the section at the end. And so they were very much functional for those events. So as a composer, I've been involved in that side of it for quite a while anyway. But to be the master of that now, you know, it's keeping that alive, it's keeping that how we communicate the gospel really through brass band music, and keeping it interesting so that people want to listen, people want to come to our concerts, and more importantly, that we can be effective in our Sunday ministry.
Yeah. Your musical heroes in the Salvation Army. I mean, at Regent Hall, you've got a quite legendary collection of bandsmen and bandswomen who have passed through, and the people at Birmingham that you've, have passed through. And obviously, because in Regent Hall, you have a central London place where a concert can be held by virtually any Salvation Army band, and when you can go and you'll be exposed to these Salvation Army giants. So who are the names that sort of stick in your brain as people that you've witnessed that you've really kind of enjoyed their music and they've sort of helped educate you in your own way by listening to their music?
Are you talking composers or generally?
I mean, yeah, composers. You know, you get the Ray Stebbinans, you get the Kenneth Downeys, you get the Andrew Blythes. I mean, this is alluding to your unique ability as in location in Regent Hall, but also because you come from, you soldiered at Birmingham, I believe, as a young man.
Yeah.
And Birmingham is a very, well-placed call with a lot of famous names going through it and a lot of composers. I think Burt Langworthy wrote the Birmingham March.
Burt Langworthy, yes, he did, yeah.
Do you have any sort of names that you've encountered on your travels that sort of helped, not necessarily sat down with the piano and helped you, but kind of gave you good thinking space on a piece that you were writing? I mean, who are the ones that sort of stick in your brain as...
See, not, as I say, not... When I was growing up, particularly at Birmingham, I wasn't doing any writing really as a youngster, apart from Marion was a very good inspiration to me at that time. And then at the rink, again, not compositionally, not many people at that stage. I wouldn't have gone to them for any advice on that, just because I was keeping it more to myself. It's only in those sort of latter years where it's come out, and I've been really privileged to be able to be in the music ministers unit as it was, with Colonel RSA coming in regularly, being there with Graham, being there with Ken Downey, and they're the people latterly that have really helped me. When RSA was coming in, I would often give him something I'd been working on, and he would have a look and give me some comments on that.
Yeah.
A lot, particularly early days when I was trying to write some slightly bigger stuff for the band. I'd get him to have a look at it, and he would give comments on that. And they were so helpful and encouraging to me at that point. And people like Andrew, who I was working with there as well. Often, if I'd finished something, I would ask him for comment, and which he would give constructive. I'd be able to improve what I was doing on that. So it's really in that time of being a sub-editor in the music ministries unit that my composition developed, and that's when I was starting to ask people, could you have a look at this? How can I improve what I'm doing on that? And actually being in that job meant that 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, I was looking at scores. That's all I was doing, was looking at people's scores. At that time, it was Peter Grant, it was Ken Downey, it was RSA, as well as a number of others. So I was doing that as my job. I could just look at how they were scoring things. Why does that work like that? Why do they do that there? And I think as much as anything, that developed my knowledge as a composer.
I'm going to piggyback here, because I know there's a couple of pieces that really meant a lot to me at the time. I remember playing Rescue Me and thinking it was a really good arrangement of a sort of a contemporary song. Most of my stuff is Unity series because I couldn't play your festival series to save my life. So Rescue Me, it goes back to 2010 when it was originally published. But where does the story of Rescue Me originate from? Was it for
Rescue Me? It was for a joint YP band.
I think it might be, because it's that kind of positive music. Yeah.
So it was. I wasn't YP. I wasn't YP band leader at the time. The YP band leader at Regent Hall asked me to do it. I've got a feeling it was Ilford YP band, the Rink, and another YP band, and they wanted a piece for that evening, and they listed that tune. I asked them for the tune. Whenever when people ask me for pieces, I tend to ask them to give me as much information or things to include as they can, so that I can start getting some ideas. But that tune was given to me, and I just wanted to make an upbeat number that those YP bands would enjoy playing.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what I want to do generally with all my pieces, is just have something that people enjoy and want to play.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear that, because you get some people who just sort of dread the thing and say, "Oh no, I'm not being asked to do that yet again." And do you worry about getting pigeonholed? Sort of, and we don't know whether Bramwell Cole's minded being the March King of the Salvation Army. Does Paul Sharman mind being sort of the latter-day Barry Gott wannabe with all these jumpy festival arrangements that the kids love to get around? Does that bother you?
No.
Good, that's fine.
Look, I as I say, I just want people to enjoy the music I write. It was when we first started in the ISB playing my music, we had Righteousness, Peace and Joy. I think Rescue Me might have been used a couple of times. Then On Duty, Blessing and Honour, all those type of similar style. And I remember Steve in one rehearsal, and it's a comment he regrets, I think, to this day, but he put it, I think, might have been Blessing and Honour up on, and he said, "Oh, it's another Sharman throwaway."
Oh.
And that sort of throwaway comment became one that we joked about, and still do, actually. But I don't mind that at all. It's music that people enjoy.
I was speaking to Ian Fairwell a while ago, and he said he finds it really difficult to remember past arrangements, and yet he said, his bandmaster Andy Mackerith can remember every single note of every single piece he's ever composed, like a photographic memory. Where does that fall for you? I mean, if someone says to you, "Can we go and talk about purpose?" do you have to sort of go back and refresh the score, or is there kind of, "Oh yeah, I know what it is"? I'm not asking you about purpose here. I'm just picking that up as an example.
Yeah. Generally, I would know enough to talk about a piece to a certain level. I would remember most of them. Funny enough, the ones you're choosing, like They're the ones that I probably don't remember quite as well. But yeah.
The rest of the day will be spent on Exalted Dale.
Exaltate Dale, no, I did that at CMI last year, so I know that one pretty well at the moment. But most of them I'd be able to talk about to some level. Not deep, all of them.
Now, I am a very big fan of the Household Troops Band, and the problem is that you tend to get whispers about pieces of music that the band plays as to how it originated and where it came from. So I know one version of this story. So I'm going to ask the composer for the story behind the Festival March Troop Salute. Now, I've heard the march. It's a wonderful medley. Can you give us the official Paul Sharman version behind Troop Salute?
Well, Troop Salute was written for Major John Mott's retirement from being the bandmaster of the troop. And they were doing a concert a weekend in Cambridge.
Yep.
A march written as a tribute to John's service as a bandmaster. And yeah, they gave me a list of tunes that they wanted in there, which included There's Only One Flag for Me, yep. Have You Been to Jesus with the Cleansing Power. Interestingly enough, they also wanted Repton in there, and I did get it in. It is in there for a couple of bars.
Sounds very Norman Beercrofty, that march.
It
kind of
does
got that emulation of sort of Cobham Hall Southall 100 behind it.
Yeah, I mean the last section is really just directly taken from James Kerno's Faith is a Victory. The way that slows down at the end, and that's very much in that style. I've also got a little bit of the tune St John in there, and Just Like John.
Yeah,
also included in there. I like those little cheeky references to things that maybe other people don't always pick up, but I know are there. So yeah, it was played, and it was a surprise for John. He didn't know anything about it.
I was going to ask that because I heard he didn't know, and the band kind of called the band and the thing, and then the band just kind of launched into Troop Salute. Yeah,
he did. I can't remember if he was conducting, but he didn't know it was going to happen. And funnily enough, the band's soprano player wasn't available for that weekend, so I was actually there playing soprano in the band that night. More special for me to actually be there and be part of it. But no, John had absolutely no idea that this march had been written. So hopefully he was pleasantly surprised. And then we did it again on the Sunday afternoon. So that's really the story behind Troop Salute. Yeah,
it's a very interesting because it hangs very well together. Because I suppose that when you're writing a march or an arrangement or selection, there's this danger, or is there an inherent danger, particularly with the old tunes, that they're so well known, it's kind of, copy and paste the tune, and then you've just got to invent the joins between the tunes, because at the end of the day, so we just want a sing-along selection, and you've still got to try and make it original.
You've got to make it original. You've got to try and, as I say, you've got to do something with that tune, whether it's rhythmically, harmonically, whatever it is. You've got to try and do something with it, because you may as well just play the tune book version otherwise.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and do something with it. And, all those ideas that they gave me for tunes, another one was, there was two marches that the troops used a lot. One was Cairo Red Shield. So it actually starts, the first couple of bars are almost a take of Cairo Red Shield. And the last two bars are a march the band used a lot at the end of their programmes was Rousseau.
Okay.
And the end of Troop Salute is almost the last two bars of Rousseau. It's all those little things, bringing them together. But yeah, it's trying to make the tunes, particularly the arrangement, something a little bit different rather than what everybody's heard before.
Yeah. Last piece of Salvation Army music you heard that moved you, and why? Or what was it that moved you?
I mean, there's been a number of these. Sitting in the ISB, we got to play new music as it came in, and there's a distinct couple of pieces that really moved the band as they read through them. One was for the first time we played Guardian of My Soul,
Yeah.
and the other was the first time we played Lavenham.
Yeah.
Both of those pieces have since become pieces that move many people. I think the last piece, Salvation Army-wise, that moved me was at the Territorial Youth Band Festival in Poole in February, when the band played Just As I Am. Is one of my favourite pieces anyway, but to be sat in the middle of those young people that are playing Just As I Am, with those words that are associated with that powerful music, I think that probably was the last time.
I mean, yeah, I was going to touch on that, because as you work in, as you say, you're seeing these scores come through, and you've spent time with the Territorial Youth Band and music schools. There must be, these young composers who are coming through this music school. And so how is that for you as a composer to see the, sort of repetition of saying, okay, guys, I know where you're coming from, and how do you find yourself as a guide and a coach to these young composers and arrangements that are coming through?
Yeah, and it's important, because those guys are, as you say, they're coming up from where I'd come from. They're trying stuff out, and I really try and get alongside them and help them all I can. I'm always saying, if you want to send me stuff in to have a listen to, I will do that and give any comments to you on that. I mean, you've had him on this, but I remember a young Sam Shelley, TYB, and he was listening to something. I asked him, and he said, "Oh, it's my compositions." And he said, "Okay, let's have a listen." And you think, yeah, pretty good for someone at that age who was, 13, 14, and then to sort of help him and see how he has come on musically in that time. And there are others that have done the same thing, and I'm not always the best at getting to those pieces quickly when they send them to me, but I really enjoy looking through that music and helping them with their craft, with how they're doing things, and if I can suggest any way, if that helps, that's great. I'm very conscious in that I don't want it to become Paul Sharman music. It's all very subjective, and when I say, well, if this was me, I'd do this and I'd do that, but actually this isn't me, this is your music, this is your work. So it's getting that balance when you're doing that between helping them find their own voice without pushing your own voice onto them.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I mean, from a music ministry point of view, and this may be, I mean, going on territory that may not be allowed to be talked about, but with young composers coming in, they've got their own fresh ideas, and there are obviously some certain notions that may not be totally entertained within a Salvation Army context for whatever reason. I mean, it wasn't until people like Bill Himes and Barry Gott broke the mould on swing pieces that, it came out the fact that, hey, a Salvation Army band could do this. Have you ever had sort of a composer come to you with an idea and you're saying, look, you're going in the right way, but, I don't think we're ready for that yet? I mean, you said Will Heaton is famous for having massive amount of music refused because they were just too technically advanced for the Salvation Army at the time. Have you had to sort of develop these people and sort of say, if you want it to a Salvation Army band, you've got to take it in a slightly different way?
Not really.
I'm glad about that.
No, I've not had anything like that, and I hope that wouldn't happen. Obviously, where I am now is I'm not involved in the editorial side of things, so when the music now comes through, we don't see any of that. But I would hope, and I believe it is the case, that they would help people through those. I would also hope, I think, Salvation Army band, Salvation Army music, needs to find a voice, needs to keep going. And I think the voices of RSA or Ray Bowes, even in those times, that they were coming through and they were doing things that people didn't really like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But now we look through that, and they were allowed to develop in that way. And I would hope that young composers coming through would have that same privilege.
Piece of music, given that we have an international army, what's the most rare comment you've had from the deepest Romania or the depths of Zimbabwe the most weirdest place you've ever heard of your music, a comment coming through?
I don't know what the weirdest one is. I just always
unusual then.
Yeah, or unusual. Sometimes you'll see a Facebook clip or a YouTube clip of a piece of mine being played somewhere, on the other side of the world, and for me that's just still unbelievable that something I wrote sat on this table, and spent a little bit of time on, that somebody is then wanting to play in Korea or in Australia or or wherever in Africa, and I still find that amazing and really sense of privilege, and it's, the fact that God takes that music and uses it in that way, I still can't believe.
Do you have the piece of music that is going to be quoted for the end of time? You James Anderson, Goldcrest, Paul Drury, Jubilee. Is there a piece of music that always gets attached to your name that you're aware of? It's like, oh, Paul Sharman, Blaze, Blessing and Honour. Is there a piece of music that sort of you get the most response from? It's like, we played this again?
I don't think there is necessarily a piece of music, just one of those that people would associate me with. I mean, I guess Righteousness, Peace and Joy, if there was to be one, Righteousness, Peace and Joy or Blessing and Honour are the ones, rather than probably some of my more extended works. No one at the moment that people are turning to, probably because of the days we're in, is Everlasting Hope, because of the theme of that, and that's one that people always mention. But other than that, I don't think there's a particular outstanding piece in that. I think because I've got such a wide, there is a wide range of styles of music there. I think there are many ones in different styles that people listen to at any time, I think.
Favourite Salvation Army song at the moment? One that's been on the repeat for the last 2 days, rather than the one that completely different one that you played last Sunday.
It's not a Salvation Army one, but it's one I've used, and I used it in the middle movement of my piece, Quest.
Oh, yes.
It's a song called This Day, and it's about just making the most of the day we're living in, and showing love to everybody, and just taking that moment, seize the day, I guess is the phrase.
That was awesome.
It's a beautiful song by Lyle Alexander, and I think that speaks a lot.
Yeah. As we are in this weird position of lockdown, has this meant that the compositional thing has sort of been given a chance to flourish more than normal, or what's in the pipeline? What's coming out of the Sharman compositional tent in the next sort of few months?
Well, I've just finished a Call It solo on the tune Jesus is the sweetest name I know. So I've just finished that one. I've got a few other things on the go. It's been a bit of a last few months. Probably been a bit of a fallow time for me as a composer. I've not got as much done as I probably would have liked to. I finished a salsa type piece for Territorial Youth Band, which they premiered at the Lighthouse in February, called A la Manera, which means in the manner of, and it's an up-tempo salsa made in the likeness of God and to be like Jesus.
See if anyone recorded it. It sounds interesting already.
I've got a recording if you're interested.
Yes, please.
But that seemed to work well, so I was quite pleased with that. That was another, not throwaway, but that was one of those lighter numbers that people seem to enjoy. I've got a number of things on the go now at this time when I've got a little bit more time on my hands. I've always fancied having a go at a set of variations, which I've not really done. I'm going to try something along those lines. I've also got an idea for a big band swing piece.
You're doing these throwaway numbers again.
Another one, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're known for, the throwaway king.
Oh, no, not. Sharman music is always enjoyable to play, and they've all got a solid message behind it. Favorite Bible quote, verse, on the fridge magnet.
Yes, Proverbs 3, and it's trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And I think for me, it's that in that Bible verse, it's the word all. In all your ways acknowledge him, and I think we've got to make sure we do that, and then we know God will be looking after us.
So, bearing in mind that family man and all the rest of it, passions in your life other than playing the instrument, conducting the band, composing the next killer cornet solo or trombone solo for your brother, what else happens in the Sharman life that you're willing to admit to?
I enjoy reading detective stories.
Ooh, lovely.
On the go, detective stories. I love walking. We go up to Keswick in the Lake District a couple of times a year. We were due to go Easter but couldn't, and we rebooked for the end of August. So we're hoping.
Hopefully.
But I love being in that up on the mountains there, just in the middle of nature, away from everything, and that really is the thing I love doing.
Good. Well, I'm going to call this quits because it's getting on, and I don't want to delay any more of your valuable time. So I'd say it's been an absolute delight and honour to speak to you, and to share time, and just to learn the stories behind the music, and just to deconstruct a bit of Sharman composition and shed a bit of light in the hidden talents and depths of your mind. So on behalf of all these YouTubers who are tuning into this mad scheme that Mr. Jones has landed on me, and I'm very thankful for the opportunities provided, but I will pray with you, and I will leave it up to you how you wish to respond, whether you shut eyes or close eyes, entirely up to you. But Paul Sharman, thank you for joining the collection and for taking the time to talk about very personal ideas and composition and things that may not normally be talked about. It's the music and it's the message that's important, not who wrote it, but we're very thankful that you've accepted the responsibility from God to use this wonderful gift. But I'll just pray with you. Heavenly Father, yet again, the gift of composition is something that many people would yearn for, but only some master. And we thank you for the gift of composition that flows through Paul, that the voice of Jesus is so clearly heard. And we thank you that, given the high expectations and the challenges of being in central London and working with things like the International Staff Band and all the pressures and temptations that arrive with that, Lord, that he can truly know you in his heart, and that he can follow you, and that the support of his family, his friends, his core folk are a strength and a guidance to him, and that they in turn will benefit from this Christianity that is so prevalent in Paul. We thank you for his spiritual witness. We thank you for his Christian witness in his music, in his humour, in his encouragement, in his friendship. And we thank you, Lord, that you have gifted him with this gift of composition and arranging that enables him to seek to glorify you. And that whether it's a throwaway 2-minute piece or a Royal Albert Hall piece or a Carnegie Hall piece, that the message of Jesus Christ that he's trying to put centre front is heard plainly and clearly, and that he is open to people to come back and say, please tell me the story. Where does this song come from? I'm not familiar with it. I want to know it as well as you have done it. We thank you, Lord. Thank you for the time today. And I just leave him in your hands with his family and friends at this very complicated, stressful time, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Morgan.